it. We're talking about gender roles. Do traditional gender roles still apply? They've been taught for decades in the church, and how do we reconcile that with more contemporary views and more progressive views on gender roles in marriages and families? And then we were showing this book.
We wrote an essay for this book, the Mother in Heaven Study Guide. It's called Partnership in Marriage. Not because we have a perfectly equal, good partnership all the time, but we really try and have a lot of intentionality in how we work in our marriage.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. So let's set a little bit of a baseline on what are we talking about when we're talking about traditional gender roles. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. We are talking about a male head of family breadwinner, and a wife, nurturer, takes care of the kids, stays at home, plus some of the ugly parts, right? Plus the wife is submissive to the husband, and the husband is dominant, and some other pieces there. Anything you would add to kind of the baseline here?
Yeah, no, I hate all of that.
Yeah, right. So as a man who likes to bake and play the piano, I have little interest in traditional gender roles. I'm just not that kind of like super masculine guy. Mm-hmm. Like it's just not on the radar for me. So, but these things have very clearly been taught in the church for a long, long time. That this kind of nuclear family, male breadwinner thing has been taught for a long time. I know growing up, going through young men's programs, I was taught that I would need to provide for my family. And what was the flip side for you?
We were taught to get an education in case our husband died. It was never supposed to be our first goal, to work outside of the home. We were taught to be mothers and to want to be mothers. And that was really all I had on my, 40-year plan. I mean, I went to college and stuff, but I chose my major. I actually changed my major because I thought I wanted to do child psychology, and I thought that it would be hard to deal with kids at work and then come home and deal with my own kids, which now looking back is completely laughable because I never actually thought that I would be working while I had kids at home. That was not my plan. And so I shifted my whole life and what I was interested in on a premise that it wasn't an option for me.
Yeah, super interesting. So we'd love to hear from you guys too. Anybody who's joined, if you were taught something similar or different, if you want to throw that in the chat. But there's lots of examples we can point to of how this was taught, not only at local levels, but at general levels in the church. There's a very famous talk from Ezra Taft Benson that I don't even like to say the name of it because I don't want you to Google it and read it. And so I won't, but it was given in the late 80s. That was kind of a landmark on how women should stay at home, and be wives and mothers. And when women work outside the home, then people get divorced, and all of this stuff. And then reinforcing this even later than that, in the mid 90s, whenever the Proclamation on the Family came out, here is the wording from the Proclamation on the Family. It says, "By divine design, fathers are to preside over their families in love and righteousness, and are responsible to provide the necessities of life and protection for their families. Mothers are primarily responsible for the nurture of their children."
So there's not a lot of ambiguity in that.
There's not. I mean, it's talking about, fathers preside. We'll come back to that word. Are responsible to provide the necessities of life and protection for their families. So it's kind of laying out male breadwinner, and then mothers are primarily responsible for the nurture of their children.
Yeah.
That kind of lays it out.
I mean, that's what we were taught. That is exactly in line with everything that I've known my whole life.
Great. Yeah. Okay. We're off to a good start.
Yep.
So this Okay, so this idea has been around for some time, and it kind of got a new coat of paint in the last couple of decades, and it gets called complementarianism. You want to talk about what that means?
I mean, it's basically just that we have, as males and females, we have complementary roles and personalities and things that we're better at, and so that's what they say is the goal of having complementary personalities, and that we're better together, but we have our separate things, and typically it has, there's hierarchy involved in that as well, with the man being in charge and the woman being submissive to him.
Right. So I think the idea of two people being complementary is not the problem here. Like if you have one person who's freewheeling and fun, and the other who's organized and plans things out, and they fit together really well, that's great. But I think there's two things that are kind of insidiously hidden in here. And one is when people are asserting that gender roles are divinely appointed, and that God has decided that men should do this and women should do this. And then the second piece of that is especially when the complementary roles are just the man is in charge and the woman is submissive. Mm-hmm. That those aren't roles. It's not complementary if one is dominant and one is submissive. That's just a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't really work.
That's patriarchy.
Right? Yeah. There's a word for it.
Yes.
Knew it. Awesome. Shout out to Jenny, who's saying the one who presides is the one who decides who says the prayer. And if that's what that means, then great. The term, I said we'd come back to that term. It shows up in other areas, in evangelical Christianity, as being called male headship. And we don't really use that term in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we do use the word preside, both in a church meeting context with a bishop or whoever, and also in the family, which is the husband, whatever that word is supposed to mean.
Yeah. So I did a post in July, and I'm just scrolling back here to find it, because when we lived in Washington, we lived next door to this couple, and the husband is a pastor in I don't even know what type of religion it is.
Christian.
Christian.
Certainly.
And we've remained social media friends since moving. But he posts a lot of videos of like Bible study things, mm-hmm. and him preaching on Sundays and whatever. And they're wonderful people. We really enjoyed living next to them. I don't really watch the videos because I'm just not super interested in hearing them. But he posted a video of somebody else talking
some other pastor.
Yeah, some other person preaching. And the title on it, like the caption on the video, it said, the curse is the woman's natural rebellion to the headship of the man. And I was like, oh, that's disgusting. I gotta watch what this is. So I watched the video, and the person said that because of the fall, essentially, I'm just going to read it. He said, your desire will be, you talking to the woman, your desire will be to usurp your husband's authority, and yet his authority will not be removed. And because of this desire, there should be a clash between you and the husband. But in this clash, creation order will not be overturned. He will rule over you. That's the nuance there in Genesis 3:16. Male headship is not invented in Genesis 3. It is reinforced in Genesis 3. But the clash against male headship is what we see as a product of the fall. That is disgusting. That is so, ugh. I could not believe that. And that's where people get this idea because of the fall. And it says in there, in some translations, that Adam would have rule over Eve and everything on the earth. And so when we start from the very beginning of our creation story with that mentality and that thought, it's no wonder that things have kind of evolved the way that they have over time.
Yeah.
And now it is up to us in this generation to break that and get rid of it. Because good night, that's gross.
Yeah. So it's interesting to note that this 1950s nuclear family idealistic thing did not start thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago even, because the single generation nuclear family wasn't really a thing until the turn of the 20th century, really, because prior to that, a lot of people were living in pastoral type communities, a lot of farmers, these sorts of things.
Multi-generational homes.
Multi-generational homes were the thing, and everybody worked on the farm, right? And so it was in the 20th century that this new ideal came around, with the husband in his suit and tie taking his briefcase to work every day, and the wife staying home taking care of the kids and
pregnant in the kitchen.
Yeah,
Those are the words you were missing.
I didn't dare to say them.
We all know.
But that's a relatively new invention. That's not from Genesis. That's not from the New Testament. That's a much newer thing. And there's a couple of things behind that. So it's a great book. I recommend it to basically everybody. It's called Jesus and John Wayne by Kristen Covas-Dumais. She came to Utah last year, and I got to hear her speak, which is really fantastic. But in this book, she talks about the evolution a little bit of this concept, and talking about kind of post-World War II ideals of domestic life and Cold War anxiety, and how that fueled the belief that a strong father figure was somehow related to strong national defense. The rise of really masculine characters in popular culture, like John Wayne, certainly.
Or Mad Men. Like,
well, yeah.
I mean,
it's that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then later through the 60s and 70s, it was a reaction to feminism. And we were being taught, not us, we weren't alive yet, but Latter-day Saints and other Christians were being taught that feminism was going to destroy families, and that a loss of male authority was going to weaken the church, it was going to weaken the nation, maybe communism was going to take over. I don't know how all these things fit together.
Yeah.
But kind of driven by fear was this concept of, you got to have a strong family with a strong father figure.
Yeah. Your computer went away.
My computer went to sleep. Let me wake it back up. Hang on. There we go.
Yeah, and I mean, when we think about it, and of course we're looking at this now, we're looking back at that time with our modern understanding and our modern take and view on things. And so, of course, we have to have a lot of grace for those people that lived at a time where there were a lot of fears, and there was, they were trying to set out this ideal of a family. And I don't know 100% of the time that they intentionally were wanting to hurt women or, whatever, but they do hurt women because they don't think of women. They didn't think of women as they were building that ideal family. They didn't think about what women need for their own soul development or, for any sort of development. And it was very much a tamping down on the women, and very prescribed roles of what we were able and allowed to do. So how now in this modern day, how do we deal with this? How do we break apart those gender norms that have been so solidly embedded into our lives?
Well, again, not that we're the shining example, and in fact, maybe we kind of distinctly aren't, but, when we got married, there wasn't necessarily a discussion of who was going to have a career.
Yeah, I did not. I got the short end of the stick. I'm just kidding.
It was just kind of assumed,
yeah.
right?
And when we got married, we slid right into those gender norms 100%.
Yeah.
I worked until I had the baby, and then I've been home ever since.
Yeah. and now she does a bunch of amazing things, founding a nonprofit and writing books and all of these things. And so how are you reacting to it now? What are you doing now? How many years we've been married? 17 years into our marriage. How are you thinking about that now?
I mean, truthfully, it's been really hard. It's been, I've had to have a lot of like self-reflection on what I want and what is actually good for me. And I've had to advocate for myself and realize that I am actually important and what I need is important and will bless my family as well. I think for a lot of women, it's hard to put ourselves first and to want to like do things that take us away from the family. And that's where having a husband that's very supportive and encouraging of that has been really nice, because I go to different study groups and different book clubs and, different things. And then, like he said, have my nonprofit and things. The problem that I think we still have and the discussion that we're still having is I want to go back to school eventually. And I don't know where to go. I don't really know what to study. Like, I'm still very early in all of that, figuring it out. But the thought of moving for my career and moving for my progression and like him staying home or finding whatever job just to support me, that is still something that we're like, well, how do we do this? Like, we still need an income. And a lot of the work that I want to do won't bring in a great income because I really like nonprofit work and, different work that is not very lucrative. And so we're still trying to figure that out of how to support me and how to give me the opportunities that I pushed to the side when we started having kids. So we're still trying to figure that out, And so a lot of our stuff does fall into gender norms because I am home and I have more time at home and, but like we now understand that the work that I do at home is not free labor. It's not something to take advantage of. It's not anything like that. It is hard labor and it is important work and, and we would be paying somebody else to do it if I wasn't home doing it. And so anyway, I think there are a lot of things that we're still trying to figure out, and how we're going to separate those norms or get rid of the norms. We do a lot of things just because of our personalities that are not directly in the societal gender norms, but I just blabbed for a long time.
No, that's great. I was going to make a joke about, I try not to nurture our kids too much because that is just not my territory. It's not my space. That is your space.
And unfortunately, it's not my personality. So our poor children. Just kidding. No, our kids are fine.
Yeah, they're fine. They're back there somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Going to bed?
Yeah, maybe. No, I think that's great. And this is another thing where I think the passing of generations, not the passing away, that's not what I meant, but the continuing parade of generations is helping. And we're squarely associated with the generation that heard that talk from President Benson, and we're influenced by it. We were pretty young for that. But we talked about the rise of feminism and reaction to feminism and stuff. President Benson was born in 1899. So in the 60s, he was in his 60s. And in the 70s, he was in his 70s. So by the time he was giving a talk in the late 80s, he was in his late 80s. He was from an entirely different era. And so, here was a called and set apart general authority, but also an 89-year-old man, or 88 or whatever he would have been at the time, 90 almost maybe, who was telling young new moms, where to be and what to be doing.
Stay home.
And I this is another case where I think that our kids are going to save us, and they're going to handle this better than we did.
Yeah. We had a comment earlier about somebody. She was saying that her parents were deaf. I don't remember the whole comment. Can you scroll up to that?
I can get that back.
That one. So yeah, so she didn't get the chance to see specific roles, gender roles. Both worked outside the home and both helped to raise the children together. And I think it's interesting because our parents, I mean, we were, what, 5 or 6 when that talk from Elder Benson came out. But both of our moms worked.
Yeah.
And mine stayed home and had a home business, but your mom was actually at an office at work. And we should talk to them. We've never talked to them about what this talk did to them, you know, what they internalized. Yeah. And it's my understanding that your mom was home when you were little. When
I was younger,
when
for
the
sure.
kids were little. But, you know, around 10 or 11, she went to work when you were 10 or 11.
I was 9, maybe, yeah.
So she would have been, you know, 5 or 6 years out of this talk. And, like, I wonder what that did for women at that time that couldn't stay home, you know, that had to go to work.
Right.
You know, there had to have been a lot of shame and guilt for those mothers that had to not follow the prophet. And then we also have somebody like Camille Johnson, our Relief Society, General Relief Society president, who chose to go to work and became a lawyer and, you know, has this great career.
At that time.
Right. And so there were women that definitely were like, okay, I'm not going to go to work. I'll stay home. But there were also women that were like, I'm going to work. I have to go to work. I want to go to work, you know, and didn't follow the prophet with that. And they're okay.
Yeah.
So
it worked out?
It worked out. Yeah.
Wow. The families did not fall apart.
They did not.
Oh man.
Not these 3 examples of our families and Sister Johnson's.
Well, and that's another thing worth calling out here is that there's a lot of families that look different too. And if you get really into this idea of this nuclear 2-parent home, you know, that leaves out, you know, a lot of homes that have a single parent, and they're doing the best they can and they're making it work. And you know, I think the work that they do is absolutely sacred. Like, I can't imagine being a single parent. It leaves out LGBT families. It leaves out a variety of families that don't fit that particular mold, not through fault of their own. That's just that's just how those families are. And so at some point we have to be able to move on from that.
I think it's interesting to remember that you know, it gets kind of muddy because the church teaches that gender is eternal, and you know, that is a phrase that we hear
in the family proclamation,
right? But gender norms are a societal construct. Gender norms of women do this and men do that. You know, that is created by society and upheld by society, and it has nothing to do with our gender of male or female. You know, like being male or female doesn't make you a better nurturer or not, you know, and everything is on a spectrum. And so I have a lot of things. I always joked. So I have 3 sisters. I'm the youngest. So there's 4 daughters. I always joked that I was the closest thing to a son that my dad ever got because I played sports and, you know, I was not feminine, not like girly at all. And so, you know, I don't feel like
now you have pink hair. And
now I have pink hair and whatever. It's all out the window now. But even pink hair is not a gender thing. Like,
fair,
it's, you know, but my point is there is a spectrum of humanity, and you might have nurturing on one side and like business on the other. I don't know, not saying that if you're a business person you can't nurture, but like we're all over the place, and there's no reason that we need to cut it down the middle and say this gender can only do these things because that is what their gender is better at, and this gender can only do this. And it's interesting. I found a quote from Adam Grant, and he talks about how like ambitious men and women are stereotyped and treated differently at work. Ambitious men get promoted and you know, get the better jobs or whatever, and aggressive or ambitious women get penalized for it. And He says, end the double standard. If you accept it in men, don't reject it in women. And so I think that there are things, personality traits that I have that get looked down on, or, I'm told to be smaller or be quieter or whatever, that if he was doing it, it would be supported and accepted, and so I think those are a lot of the gender norms that we're trying to break down and show that there's no reason that society needs to follow that specific layout of rules.
Yep. And we've got, more women graduating from college than men. Things are shifting. It's turning into a different world than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, 40, 50, going back into, President Benson and before.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap it up. We'd love to see if there's any questions or comments. Please throw them in the chat. We did get a comment about seeing more women in the workplace and generally knowing a lot of women that work. And that rings true largely.
Yeah. In our economy, you kind of have to. A lot of families have to survive.
Yep. If you want to buy a house, especially,
yeah,
2 incomes has kind of become the norm for that in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And yet we still don't have the systems to support that, you know?
Right.
We don't have great childcare options in America, and we have, there are a lot of systemic problems.
Yep. So I wanted to throw one more thought out. We've been pretty clear where we stand on some of these things. Some people do still hold to these gender norms and potentially believe that they are divinely appointed. I don't think that's the case. I think that's a culture thing that's shifting. Some people will point to isolated verses in the New Testament, largely from Paul, about women should be quiet and these sorts of things that I don't think they really stand up when you're reading context and verses and chapters around them.
And they're often attributed to Paul and not actually biblical scholars don't think he actually wrote a lot of them.
Yeah. And so I wanted to share this quote I mentioned Kristen Kobus-Dumais, whose book is fabulous, but we can't get through this without talking about Beth Allison Barr, who wrote The Making of Biblical Womanhood.
So good.
So good. And this is what she said. I thought this was so powerful. Christians in the past may have used Paul to exclude women from leadership, but this doesn't mean that the subjugation of women is biblical. It just means that Christians today are repeating the same mistake of Christians in the past, modeling our treatment of women after the world around us instead of the world Jesus shows us is possible.
That's so good.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah.
And we tend to look at scripture as being like, well, they were perfect back then, right? Like Paul was perfect, and
I don't know that I've ever thought that. We do hold them up on a pedestal sometimes, though.
Yeah, it's true. We got another comment in the chat again about poor President Benson. Kind of taking the brunt of this today. I have my first memories of General Conference were of President Benson not being at the sessions because he was watching from his apartment because he was so sick or
old,
just very old.
Yeah. Not old like we know now, though, with our prophet.
Yeah, not quite close. There's a comment in the chat about him being in his 20s when women got the vote. And then there was a comment earlier about him being born in the 1800s. He really was, and he was the prophet of our, some of our childhood and that sort of thing. And so, kind of funny that this man who witnessed the suffrage movement and was born in the 1800s was kind of the catalyst for 1990s, gender role entrenchment.
Yeah,
which is kind of wild. Yeah. So. All right. Anything else you want to add?
Let's do better.
Right.
When we know better, we do better. Maya Angelou. So we can do so much better. And I think that a lot of this is going to be being more vocal about how we are. I can be vocal about not loving, my gender norm, societal norm, motherhood role. And I love my kids. I love being a mom, but I don't love everything that comes with it that society expects of me. And you can be more vocal about being the baker of the family and, you know, being
I'm
the
very
musician.
vocal about it, to be fair.
You know, I mean, people do get his bread a lot. So,
and hopefully we're the last generation that when people get married, they slide right into those roles without like talking about it and making intentional decisions about it.
And it's okay if you do want to be in those roles,
Absolutely.
but talk about it first. Like, don't just assume like we did.
Choice is the point,
Yeah.
right? The point isn't to upend it. The point is to have choice and make decisions together.
Yep. All right.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.